Hello. Hello, everyone. I would like for you to give me a thumbs up or a note in the chat. I jumped on here a little early because I just want to make sure all my technology is working. So if I could know if you guys can hear me. Okay, great. Everybody can hear me. That's what I wanted to know. So if you'll just give me a couple of minutes, I'm going to give everybody a chance to get into the chat and into the video live. I just want to make sure all my technology is working tonight. If you guys have any questions, feel free to go ahead and ask them. Are you enjoying the summit so far? I hope everybody's enjoying the summit. We're going to get started here in just about a minute. I'm excited that you're here too, Bob. And I love that you posted your picture and that you're learning technology. I can totally relate. It can be overwhelming at a few times. So feel free to ask questions. You can go ahead and put them in the chat now if you have questions. And I'm going to be going back and forth between the chat here and the chat on Facebook Live, which I'm getting ready to start. Just give me 1 second and we'll all... Okay, everyone, I am ready to jump in and start the Cracking Your College Admissions Code Virtual Summit question and answer. So I'm going to kind of just go through and talk a little bit about the topics we've already gone through in the summit the first 2 or 3 days. And then as everybody kind of joins in, we will kind of switch over to the question and answer section. So I do have this going live on Facebook as well as in the webinar room that I sent you guys. So I'll be able to see chats from both. And if you have questions, please make sure to put them in, and I will be excited to answer those and kind of go back and forth. So obviously, I hope everybody is having a great summit, that you're getting some really wonderful information from the summit. Our first day was the talk, and we talked about this a little bit on Monday, but was surrounding like what's involved in the college admissions process and how those decisions are made. And I think that's a huge topic because we are seeing the colleges become more and more competitive, and it's better for us if we understand why it's competitive, how college admission officers are making decisions and those type of things in order to better choose colleges and to help our kids as they're going through this process. And so I'm really hoping that you guys got to listen to that and that it was valuable information. In addition to that, yesterday, you got to hear Leah Sackerman. Leah is an amazing colleague of mine, and I love her. She's from Mom Knows College, and she talked about the college timeline. And so I wanted to spend a little time kind of going through some of the things that she talked about. And again, if you have questions, please jump on, write them, whether you're on Facebook or you're in the chat room on the webinar. Either way, it doesn't matter. Just write your questions in there and I'll be glad to answer them, no matter what those questions are. It doesn't have to they don't have to deal with the topics that we've just recently gone through. It can be any subject that you want to ask about, or even something personal for you, your child, that type of thing. So with the timeline, it is really important to understand this whole process. And obviously, Leah started out freshman year. So for those of you who are listening and have students who are younger, who are 8th grade going into 9th grade or 9th grade going into 10th grade, somewhere in that range, you are at a good place. You have a lot of time. You can jump in and you can begin to put everything into place to be able to be competitive in the college admissions process. This all starts early on. And so a lot of times parents will say, well, okay, my child's a freshman. We don't really need to think about this until they're juniors. And that's really not true. We see kids that are applying to colleges all the time who have started nonprofits, who are making a difference in the world, who are starting their own businesses, who are taking competitive courses that are really building their resume and really developing that uniquely you that I talk so much about. And that is huge. And so I want to encourage you that if you have a student that is younger, then you're going to want to start this process now with them. Get them thinking about college, get them thinking about what options there are for them, and so that they can begin to jump in and get going. Now, let's jump to the other end. What if you're a junior and you're thinking, okay, that's not very good. I'm a junior and I've done some things, but I haven't really done all of those things. I didn't know that I could start a nonprofit, or that I could go out and start a business, or that I could go to a camp or do a summer experience or any of those type of things. So I want to encourage you that it's going to be okay. You can take a deep breath. And sorry, guys, I'm fighting allergies. I'm in Texas. And so I just want to say that right up front, that we have a lot of wind. It's kind of cold here, but the wind is going crazy. And so are my allergies. But anyway, so back to the timeline. So if you're a junior or your child's a junior, then you want to jump on this process right now. And you're going to want to really take some time and go back and think through your freshman years. Think about all the things that you have done up to this point. Think about what's important, and then begin to start that timeline as a junior. The good news is that you haven't missed application deadlines. You still can build a good, solid college list. You have time to work on those essays. You have plenty of time to continue to make sure that your application is strong. And it's not too late to really add something that's going to build your resume. And I may have said this on Monday, I can't remember, but it's worth saying again. I've had a couple of situations where I've had juniors come in and they have decent resumes, but they're not really this robust, extremely, strong resume. And so when we've gone back through and we've done their Uniquely You and we figured out what really was important to them, then they were able to go and become part of something in the middle of their junior year at this point. And they were able to really make a change and make a difference and then really show that on their applications, and it made a difference in them getting accepted. And so therefore, if you're a junior, then don't panic at all. I just really want to encourage you, take a breath. If you're a mom of or a dad of a junior student, then it's okay. You just now know that timeline and you know where and what you need to be doing to go forward. And so you can always go kind of back and do a fast forward to the next step so that you're ready to take on that application process and hit the deadlines. I know Leah said this in her talk, and so I want to just really kind of go back and say this again, but it's really important that you know deadlines, because if you miss a deadline, then you're going to just be out of luck. Colleges are not going to go back and say, oh, I'm so sorry, and I know that you really meant to be on time, and I feel bad for you, so I'm going to go ahead and let you make up that and get that application in. So making sure that you have the right resources, that you have a good system in place, those type of things. I use, and I have in my EPC campus, an amazing online tool that I use with students, and it allows you to know all the deadlines for every college. It lets you know if you're a Reach, a Fit, Safe School. There's lots of research tools, but one of the things I love is that it sends you reminders, and it will tell you, oh yes, this is when that particular application is due. And then it'll send you a reminder. You can set it where it says, this is when the school wants it. This is when I want it due. And then it sends you reminders. So if you don't have something and you're not part of my campus, or you don't have these type of tools, then make a spreadsheet. That's something you can absolutely do. Take the spreadsheet, put your colleges in there, put the deadlines. What is the early action? What's the early decision? And one thing to remember is that not all of those early decision action are binding. You need to look and read, is it a binding or a non-binding? And if it's non-binding, you're going to want to get your application in early so that you have a better chance as far as getting accepted, because there are fewer students applying to those early deadlines. Therefore, make sure that you know, and then put on there, this is when if it's due on November 1st, then give yourself a deadline of October 1st and really stick to it. Help your child know this is when it's due, because you're going to feel a whole lot better being able to go, I'm breathing and I'm going to make sure that the application is done early, and that's great. And one thing to remember, if any of you are applying to California schools, is that you're able to go in and really start looking at applications and the process and the questions that they have and those things in October, but you can only submit your application to California schools from November 1st to November 30th. That's it. So if you're applying to any of the colleges in California, you're going to want to make sure that you know what they are, and that you get in there and start those applications as early as you can. And you can start putting the pieces of that together sooner so that you are ready to just go in and answer the things that you don't know and fill in the application itself once it opens. And that's why it's important to really know what the deadlines are, when they're due, and making sure that you're getting them in. And hey, Ethan, he's on. Ethan is one of our speakers, so I'm excited to see Ethan on here. So Ethan, you can feel free to jump in and answer questions as well. And Dana, welcome on Facebook Live as well. I've told everybody to feel free to ask questions, let me know, and I'll be glad to answer those as we're going through. And I've been just kind of going through talking about the sessions that we've already had. So that's a little bit about the timeline. And then today, you got an email and a reminder to watch Susan from WOW Writing Workshop. Susan is amazing. I've worked with her for years. She works with professional writers all the way to college students that work with college. They're going to college and writing those essays. And she knows how to really help students find what they need to be writing about. And for me, the essay is a really important part of the application process. And I know Susan talked about this in her talk as well, because she referred to the fact that the actual college essay can be the one thing that pushes you over the edge. So they're going to look at your academics and all of those things, and there's all of those things that make you a number. But then there's the things that make you human. And your essay is one of those things. And that's why I really encourage you, if you haven't watched that particular session, go back, jump in, really hear what's involved in that main essay and what you need to be doing. And as parents, we want our kids to have that perfect essay. And we want to help reread it and proof it and all of those things. And that it's important. You want to have the essay proofed for sure. But at the same time, it's really important that you are letting your child show their voice, show their passion, that uniquely you I talk about. Make sure that that's coming through in that essay. And I can promise you that one out of place comma or one mistake in that essay is not going to keep your student out of college, as long as they are really telling a story. And that when I read that story, I really know about them. I see who they are. I see them in a very human way. I see them in a way that I can actually visualize who they are, as well as just going, oh, this student is just a number. I've had students that have actually gotten scholarships from colleges for an essay. I've had a couple of them do that. And one of my favorite essays, and I share this story all the time, was a student quite a few years ago. I mean, it's been probably 5 or 6 years now. And the student, the question that was being asked on the application was, if you could be anyone, fiction or nonfiction, regardless of who that person was, who would you choose and why? And it was a girl, and she said that she would be Santa Claus. And she went into this thing saying that she would be Santa Claus because Mrs. Claus stays home and makes all the cookies and helps oversee everything. And that's all really great because she's like the, running the whole show there back on the North Pole. But that as Santa Claus, that she actually gets to go out and give gifts and go down chimneys, and she got to eat cookies. And then she took that and turned it around into the fact that she personally loves to go out and give back into the community, that she wants to be that person that will help a child when they're in need, and she loves that. All came across in her essay. And when she got her acceptance letter from the school, she got a personal little note written on there from the admissions office that said, this is one of my favorite essays I've ever written. And so what I want you to remember is that as a person, as a college admissions officer, they're reading hundreds of essays, and they're all coming in at one time, and they start reading, and you may be the person whose application and essay they're reading at 10 o'clock at night, and it's, they're trying to get through them all, and they're tired, and they're on their 20th cup of coffee. And if you write the standard you know, answer and you haven't showed anything, you know, you're rereading your essay, because that's what a lot of kids do. They'll go back and say, well, this and this and this and this and this about me, but it's basically they're just going through rereading their essay. They've already got, I mean, I'm sorry, your resume, not essay. Sorry, they're just restating their resume. And they already know your resume, so you don't need to redo that. The other thing is that they never answer the question. And a good example of this is that I'll ask kids a lot of times, like, who is your hero? Why are they your hero? And what do you know, what kind of impact did they make on you? And so students will say, oh, my hero's my dad, and he is so great. And these are all the reasons that he's great. And he impacted me because he was a hard worker. And so I finished that essay, and I can tell you a million amazing things about that child's dad, but I can't tell you one thing about the student, because they didn't really read through. They weren't asking you to tell them all about the person, what the person did. They want to know how that impacted you, what changes it had on you, how you interacted with that person, and what difference that made in your life. So just remember answering those questions and really looking at it. I suggest breaking the question down. Usually there's 2 or 3 parts. Break those questions down, look at them, and make sure that you're answering them. Again, feel free, everybody, to ask questions. I love answering questions, and we had some great questions Monday night, and I can see we got several people on the calls, and so I want to encourage you to jump in and ask a question, because I would love to answer them. Bob, let's see, he said, I adopted my son from Guatemala. He did Ancestry.com and found he's 50% American Indian and 32% Hispanic Latino. Is that all he needs to check off the boxes for race and ethnicity? Yes, I mean, he's going to want to, because when they go through and they ask about the ethnicity, you can check more than one box. So you're going to want to make sure that you do that. I will tell you that while colleges are looking for diversity, and they are looking for those students who are of various races, and they are looking for, you know, certain, they have their check boxes, so to speak. At the same time, they still cannot and won't accept all of any one particular race, even if it is a race that, I'm sorry, my brain just had a moment. Let me rephrase that. So when they're looking for the ethnicity blank, that box, they're not going to just choose all of one ethnicity. That's what I was trying to say. So it's getting a little late. So basically what that means is that if a particular college, let's say for your son, he's American Indian, and they are going, okay, or the Hispanic, and let's say they have a very large pool of Hispanic students or Native American students that are applying, then it does check off a box, but it's not a box that guarantees or gives them an advantage in the admissions process necessarily, if that makes sense. Now, if your child is Latino and you live in some rural, you know, town where maybe everybody's a farmer and there's not very many kids that go to college, and that college is looking for students that are in their diversity, they're looking for kids that are from rural America, and your student happens to be able to check the box for that and the race box, and that can help out as well. So it's always important that you check everything for your race. If you're, you know, you have more than one box, feel free to check those. That's perfectly fine for you to do that. And it's not going to go against you as well. So just keep that in mind, that, you know, a lot of people will say, well, I don't really, should I not check a box? And, you know, that's up to you. If you'd rather not share your race, you don't have to. That's totally optional. But I will tell you that they're pretty savvy and they're going to be able to figure that out. I mean, typically your transcripts are going to have it on there. Your test, your stuff when you fill out the College Board is going to have it on there. So it's going to come from other places. But to answer your question, yes, that's all he needs to do is check both of those boxes. So hopefully that answers that question. So anybody else, make sure to put your questions in there. I'll be glad to answer them and everything. Oh, he was saying he was wondering about documentation for proof. They don't typically ask you to prove your ethnicity. They're going to know that once you're accepted and you're going to be submitting other information to the school. Once you say, this is where I'm going. If you lie on your application and you get to the school and a student, let's say some student chose to lie, then they can pull your admissions and tell you, sorry, you lied, and so therefore you're not going to have that admission. So because they have that in place, they don't typically ask for documentation of something up front. Now, if you're applying for a scholarship, then that could be different. So let's say that there is this particular scholarship for a Native American, and you've got to be part of some particular tribe, then at that point they're going to want to see that type of documentation. So hopefully that answers that question. I want to, while everybody else is thinking and putting in questions as you think of them, I wanted to go ahead and talk about tomorrow's session. As I mentioned a minute ago, Ethan is online. I'm very excited, and he is with Method Test Prep, and he will be, his session will be coming out tomorrow. So you'll be getting an email about that. And your tests are a huge, huge part of the college admissions process. And even though we are seeing a lot of schools that are offering test optional, and that's wonderful. And so students that just don't test well at all can go that and can look at those schools. But ultimately, if you want scholarships from a college and so forth, you're going to have to submit some kind of test scores, because a majority of the scholarships are still based upon those tests. And therefore, it's important that you go ahead and take them. Also, there are some schools, they may not require an SAT or ACT, but they are going to require a subject test. And so if you're going to have to study and take the subject test, then you definitely need to go ahead and take that ACT and SAT as well. And so you want to make sure that you're working with a company that, or a person or an individual or whoever that understands test prep, that can offer that to you, and that will be able to help your student move forward in that process and do better on their scores. And, people ask me all the time, which is better, SAT, ACT? It depends. I know that's not the answer you want me to tell you, but all colleges accept both. And so either one works for you. So it just depends on your child. I know that there are a lot of places that you can take a practice test. You can do it online, those type of things. So I encourage you for that. Hey, Teresa, I'm glad to see you. She said, hi again, Gina. She was on Monday. She said she learned a lot about aptitude testing with our speaker. So that's great. And so you must have listened to Dana. She was asking what other options were available besides just her services. There are, Teresa, I can private message you later and kind of give you some information on that. There are some different things that you can do. In my talk under the Uniquely You, I will offer, I think I put that link in mine. I'm not sure if I did, but I was going to. I will do it if I didn't. But there is a place called 16personalities.com, and it's a free aptitude. Well, it's a free test that is the Myers-Briggs test. It's a shorter version, but that's a great place to start. It doesn't really go into so much of the aptitude testing, but it definitely helps you learn all of your different personalities and things to that effect. So that would be probably my suggestion as far as looking and going that direction. for the aptitude type testing. Pull in, I would pull in like some personality testing, some different things to that effect as well. And so I will send you a private message or an email later and give you maybe some other directions so that you can look for that, because the aptitude testing is a big deal. It really helps you, your child, determine what their strengths are, what their passions and those type of things are. And a lot of times kids don't know that. They think, I always kind of describe it like this. Interests are important and we want to know what our interests are. But a lot of times your interests change. And if you think about your child when they were younger, maybe they played Legos or Barbie dolls or some kind of toys, and they become teenagers and they go into the video games, and then they go to college and their interests, they become more social. They begin to join clubs, or they begin to think about world issues, and then they go to work in a company, and so they become passionate about their careers and so forth. So throughout life, your interests can change. But your aptitudes are your natural abilities that you have within yourself, and those don't change. These are the things that you're born with. And I think that, we see that a lot in our own kids. We can tell, oh, they really do. They're very natural at these particular things. And it's not necessarily just about, are they good in algebra? It's not like that at all. It's not about like, are they good in a particular subject or anything to that effect, but it's more about, what are their talents? Do they see things in three-dimensional ways? Are they outgoing or are they more introvert? And then how does that relate into the job world or the careers, those type of things? Because you can think about any particular field, and let's say that your child loves writing. We'll use that for example. And we know they like to write, but what kind of career are they going to have? And so maybe you think, oh, they would be a great journalist because they're a great writer, but they're really introverted. And so putting them out in front of everybody would be very stressful. But they can take that writing and maybe they're going to be a copywriter for somebody. Maybe they're going to edit. Maybe they're going to write, do some kind of blog or something to that effect. But do writing for a particular news media, something like that. They could write screenplays. If they love the medical field and they love writing, then maybe they're going to go in and they're going to work on research and write papers and things to that effect. So there's a lot of ways that these things all fit together. And so I'm glad that you watched the session. I hope you learned a lot from it. As well as just hearing from her. So I'm really, if any of you have watched any of the other sessions, I would love to hear what you thought, because we have some great speakers in this session. Like I said, Ethan's coming up next with test prep, and then we're going to go from him into we're going to be talking about money coming up. I know that's a big issue for everybody. We have a couple of different scholarships. We have a couple of different people that are going to talk about the FAFSA, understanding money. So I will definitely next week be doing a live call where we're going to really focus in on all of the financial aid parts of this, try to answer those questions. I will give my disclaimer now. I understand the process. I know the process. I work with families, but I'm not a financial advisor. So I can't advise you on your specific situation. I can just guide you through the process and what that looks like. Hello, everybody. Hello, Leah. Leah just jumped on, and I was talking about Leah earlier, so she'll have to go back and listen to that now. But yeah, Leah was the one that's from Mom Knows College, and so it was great having her and getting to hear her talk this week. And so I know that you guys got a lot from the timeline. So I'm looking, she says hello to everybody, and she would be glad to answer questions in the chat, as well as Ethan too. I know both of them would be more than happy to do that. If you have some questions specifically for them, just feel free to put that in the chat and I can read that out and read their answer for you. But I've been excited. I love the summit. It was really great putting it together. And I really do hope that all of you are getting some great information from it, and that you're really being able to start thinking and figuring out how to put a plan together for your student. And so I encourage you to keep looking at that and keep going through all of the different speakers. Does anybody else have any really specific questions? I'll give you a second to type those in. I know that there can be a little bit of a delay. Well, I guess I can just keep talking to you. I'm excited that our chat in the for the webinar that I sent out is working, and that people are have sent some chats in there, because last week on Monday, or earlier this week on Monday, there was just a technical glitch, and so I couldn't get them both working. So it's really, I'm excited that we have both formats going tonight. Anybody else have any other wonderful questions? So we've figured out, we now know why colleges are competitive. We know the timeline. We understand what to do to really get that timeline in order. We have talked about the essay and really thinking about getting a really strong essay. And tomorrow we get to dive into test prep. And like I said, that's a great topic, and one you're definitely not going to want to miss. And from there, I think then the person that Teresa mentioned, Dana, I think is after Ethan. And so we'll be able to hear about those aptitudes that I was talking about, how to really figure that out and know what that means, and why it's an important part of the college admissions process. Well, cool. This has been great. If we don't have any more questions, then I think we'll go ahead and end. But I want to give a couple of more minutes. If anybody has any other questions they want to pop into the chat, I want to make sure that I'm answering everybody's questions before we go. And I love the feedback. I don't know if anybody on either of these calls have been one of the people that have done this, but I've had several people that have responded to it, the emails, or told me that they're really getting a lot of great information, that they're really excited about it. And no, Bob, I didn't get your question about the SAT. Do you want to pop that back in, Bob? I'll hold back on while you redo that. It didn't come through. Oh, there it is. Okay. It says, if my son registers for the March 9th SAT and the April 9th SAT at his school, can we control what and when scores go to the college? Is he that he's thinking about? Yes. You do not have to send your test scores when you take the test. As a matter of fact, it gives you the option to send to, I think, 4 or 5 schools, but you don't necessarily want to do that, especially if it's the first time your student's taking it. And I know it's difficult. I mean, if you're in a real financial budget, then you might go ahead and do it. And especially if you know your child's a good test taker, but it's better to hold those back, look at your test scores, and then send your top scores to the school. So no, you do not. They'll go through even though he's taking them at his school, he'll still go through the same process, and you can wait, and then you can send those scores all at one time once you know which schools he's going to and which are his top scores. I love this, Teresa. What's the best way to force our kids to fill out scholarship forms? Leah, I'm going to let you answer that as well, and I'm going to talk to Teresa, but you might have some ideas about that too. And, one of the things, and I'm sure Leah will probably share this, and she talks about it. Oh, she said encourage. She goes, I meant encourage, LOL. Of course, right? We want to encourage them. One of the things that Leah talks, I think when we have a question and answer session at the very end, and I think we addressed this a little bit, but I've heard of families that will tell a student for every scholarship form you fill out, I'm going to give you, $1 or whatever. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but look at your budget and put in that Leah said she offered 10% of any of the scholarships that her kids earned, that it went right into their pockets like a part-time job. Some people pay per application. It's difficult because what I see happen is early on kids do not get as excited about applying for college because they don't get the whole financial thing. And then it comes down to this time of the year. And then my seniors that I'm working with are all panicked and going, okay, I got to apply for scholarships. And that's great. But at the same time, you can't really, go back. And so many of those scholarships have passed. And so I would really think of some kind of incentive that you can give your kids so that they will go ahead and get those scholarships applied for. And I know like Leah gives that 10% to her kids, and I know there are other people that will do that, or they'll tell their kids, okay, for every dollar that you get, then, that same amount of money goes into some kind of savings for after they get out of college or something to that effect. And so therefore it helps to kind of offset it. So, think creatively, figure out a way to just encourage them. And definitely for those of you who have younger students, if there are any of you that have those freshmen, there are scholarships out there for freshmen. There are scholarships that start really young. As a matter of fact, and I will drop this into the Facebook later because I'm probably not going to give the right exact name, but they're here in Texas. They were advertising today a scholarship. It's called Yellow Lights some scholarship, and it actually has to do with safe driving. And the deadline's coming up, I think, in April 1st was what they were saying. And there, Leah dropped in her, she has a great blog on how to motivate your teens, so you can read that. But anyway, that particular scholarship is for juniors and seniors and students that are in college. And so your kids can still apply for scholarships once they're in college. So if you can get them on a good path so that they're applying for those scholarships early, then it'll be easier for them to keep doing it when they're in college. And there's nothing better than to get paid to go to college, right? And so try to help them look at it that way. If you don't want to have to work while you're in college, so all of this money kind of goes that direction. And so I really encourage you to look at that too. So I hope that helps you, Teresa. I'm sure it did. And everybody else on the call. Anybody else have any other questions that they want to ask? Specific questions are fine. I encourage you to jump in and just feel free to ask those before we close up tonight. No other questions? Kind of quiet. Well, I do encourage you. I thank everybody for being on, and we'll be going live a couple of times next week as well. I want to really make sure I'm in here answering those questions. I'm glad that you guys are enjoying the summit. I really hope that you're getting your questions answered. Feel free to send me a private message or respond to an email if you have something specific that you really want answered. I'll be more than happy to do that. And so thank you. Teresa said, great information. I love the whole summit. That makes me very happy. I loved, my goal was that this would be something that would really help you as parents. And, regardless of whether your child's a freshman or whether your child's a junior, or I know we have a couple of late seniors. And if your child's a late senior, then you might want to consider a gap year. Otherwise, you really need to take a step back and look at what options there are, because there are some schools that have rolling admission. So it's not too late to get into some of those schools, but you just want to make sure you're really getting into the right schools. So I am thankful again that you're here, and I hope you enjoy the remaining speakers this week and this weekend. And I will look forward. I'll probably be on Monday or Tuesday. I'll send you out an email. I'll put it back in the Facebook group. And I think Tuesday. I'll probably be on Tuesday next week. I think it's next Tuesday evening that I have on my calendar. So I will definitely be here and be glad to answer any questions. And in the meantime, have fun, drop things into the Facebook group, engage with each other, and I want you to get as much as possible out of the summit. So, and you're welcome, Bob. He said thank you as well. It was great having you all on the call, and I hope you have a great evening.